My dear Michelangelo, said Gonfalonier Soderini, it seems to me that you are more often covered with mud than with capon broth. He sat back, let the brittle early March sunlight stream over his face. Michelangelo had learned in the several days since his return to Florence that Soderini had good reason to be satisfied with himself. Through his brilliant roving ambassador, Niccolo Machiavelli, whom he had been training in the same manner that Lorenzo de' Medici had trained him, Florence had concluded a series of amiable treaties which should enable the city-state to live in peace and prosperity. All reports from Bologna and the Vatican tell us that Julius is delighted. Gonfalonier. The 5 years I spent carving the David, the Brutus, Madonna, and the Dondos were the happiest of my life. I hunger for only one thing, to carve marble. Soderini leaned across the desk, his eyes sparkling. The Signoria knows how to express its gratitude. I am empowered to offer you a fine commission, a gigantic Hercules, to match your David, with one of your figures on either side of the main gate to the Palazzo della Signoria. Ours will be the noblest entrance to a city-state government in the world. Michelangelo drew in his breath. A giant Hercules, representing all that was the strongest and finest of the classical culture of Greece. Il Magnifico had made Florence the Athens of the West. Here was an opportunity to establish the connecting links between Pericles and Lorenzo, to follow through his early experiments with the Hercules. He shook with excitement. Can I have my house back, and my studio to carve the Hercules in? It's rented now, but the lease expires soon. I will charge you 8 florins a month rental. When you begin carving the apostles, the house will become yours again. Michelangelo sat down, suddenly weak. This is where I would live and carve all the rest of my life. May God hear my words. Soderini asked anxiously, What about Rome and the tomb marbles? I've written to San Gallo. He has made it clear to the Pope that I will go back to Rome only to revise my agreement and bring the marble columns back to Florence. I will work with them all together, Moses, Hercules, St. Matthew, the captives. His voice was full of the joy he felt inside himself. Soderini gazed over his wife's red geraniums to the roofs of Florence. It is not part of my job to interfere in family life, but the time has come for you to secure your freedom from your father. I want him to go with you to a notary and sign a legal emancipation. Up to now, the money you have earned has been legally his. After your emancipation, it will belong to you, and you can control it. What you give to your father then will be a gift, not an obligation. Michelangelo was silent. He knew all of his father's failings, yet he loved him, shared Lodovico's pride in the family name, the desire to rebuild its place in Tuscan society. He shook his head slowly. It would do no good, Gonfalonier. I would have to turn over the money to him anyway, even if it were mine. Soderini persisted. I shall make an appointment with the notary. Now, about the marble for the Hercules. Could I select at Carrara? I will write to Cucciarello, the quarry owner, telling him that you are to have the biggest and purest block ever quarried in the Apuan Alps. Lodovico was heartbroken at being obliged to appear before the notary. Ser Giovanni de Romana, for under Tuscan law an unmarried son, became free only at the death of his father. There were tears in Lodovico's eyes as they walked home past the ancient church of San Ferenz and up the Via del Proncuzzolo. Michelangelo, you won't abandon us now? You promised Buonarrota and Givone Simone that you would set them up in a shop. We need to buy several more farms to build our income. Because of a few lines on paper, Michelangelo's relationship with his father had been reversed. Now he was the one in authority. He could no longer be badgered or driven. Yet glancing out of the corner of his eyes, he saw that 64-year-old Lodovico had aged 10 years in the 10-minute legal ceremony. His head was bowed, his shoulders hunched. I will always do everything in my power for the family, Father. What else have I? My work and my family. Renewed and his friendships at the company of the Cauldron. Roselli had died. Botticelli was too ill to attend, and so younger members had been elected, including Rodolfo Ghirlandaio, Sebastiano da Sangallo, Franciabigio, Jacopo Sansovino, Andrea de Sarto, a talented painter. He was delighted with Granacci, who had completed 2 works that had absorbed him for several years, a Madonna with infant St. John and St. John the Evangelist at Patmos. Granacci, you acknowledged scoundrel. These are glorious. The color is... The color is beautiful. The figures, fine. I always told you that you would become a great painter if you worked at it. Granacci flushed. What do you say we have a party at the villa tonight? I'll invite the company. How is Vermilia? Vermilia? Married. To a clerk in Pistoia. She wanted to earn a family. I gave her a dowry. I have a new girl, her hair redder than Tedesco's, plump as a partridge. He learned that Contessina's lot was considerably better now. With the growing popularity and importance of Cardinal Giovanni in Rome, the Signoria had permitted the Ridolfi family to move up the hill to the main villa, far more commodious and comfortable. Cardinal Giovanni sent the supplies and money they needed. Contessina was permitted to come into Florence whenever she wished, but not Ridolfi. She would have been permitted to join her brother in Rome, but since Ridolfi was still an avowed enemy of the Republic, the Signoria was not willing to let him out of its earshot. She caught him flat-footedly gazing at his David. It is still good? You have not worn out your pleasure in it? He whirled at the sound of her voice, found himself gazing into the piercing brown eyes that had always been able to stab through his thoughts. She had high color in her cheeks from the walk and her brisk March air. Her figure had filled out. She was growing a little matronly. Contessina, how well you look. It is good to see you. How was Bologna? Dante's Inferno. All of it? Though her question was innocently asked, he flushed till the curls brushed down over his square brow. What was her name? Clarissa. Why did you leave her? She left me. Why didn't you follow? I had no carriage. Then you have known love, some portion of it, she asked seriously, in full measure. Tears flooded her eyes. Permit me to envy you, she whispered and was gone, walking quickly out the piazza before he could follow her. Gonfalonier Soderini advanced from 200 florins against future work. He went to see young Lorenzo Strozzi, whom he had known since his family bought the Hercules. Lorenzo Strozzi had married Lucrezia Rucellai, daughter of Il Magnifico's sister Nannina and of Michelangelo's cousin Bernardo Rucellai. Michelangelo asked Strozzi if he could invest a modest sum in his brother's names, so that they might begin to share in the profits of the shop. If the arrangement works well, Messer Strozzi, I could keep the building the fund as I accumulate money, so that my brothers will earn money more. That will be agreeable to my family, Buonarroti, and if at any time you wish your brothers to open an independent shop, we will provide them with the wool from our looms in Prato. He walked to the Duomo workyard, was raucously welcomed by Bepi and his stone hewers. Only Lapo turned away. You want me to build another shop for you? Bepi cackled toothlessly. Not yet, Bepi, not until I go to Carrara and find a block for the Hercules. But if you would help me move the St. Matthew so I won't be in your way. He had chosen St. Matthew because his was the first gospel in the New Testament, and because Matthew had not met a violent end. His early sketches of Matthew had envisaged him as a tranquil scholar, book in one hand, chin held reflexively in the other. Though he had broken into the front wall of the block, uncertainty had kept him from probing further. Now he understood why. He could find no historical Matthew. His was not the first gospel written, for he had absorbed much of Mark. He was said to have been close to Jesus, yet he had not written his gospel until 50 to 70 years after Christ's death. He took his problem to Prior Bisciolini. The prior's deep blue eyes had grown larger behind his magnifying lenses as his face shrank with age. Everything about St. Matthew is disputed, he murmured in the quiet library. Was he Levi, a tax collector in the service of Herod Antipas? Perhaps not. The sole reference to him outside the New Testament is in Greek and in error. It says that Matthew composed the oracles in the Hebrew language, but they were written in Greek for Greek-speaking Jews, to prove to them that Jesus was several times predicted in the Old Testament. What am I to do, Father? You must create your own Matthew, even as you created your own David and Pieta. Walk away from the books. The wisdom lies in you. Whatever you carve about Matthew will be the truth. Michelangelo smiled as he shook his head up and down. Father, your words are kind. No one has ever had so much faith in me. He started over again, searching for Matthew who would symbolize man in his torturous quest for God. Could he carve Matthew in an upward spiraling movement, trying to break his way out of the marble block, even as man had struggled to release himself from the stone mountain of polytheism in which he had lain enchained? He designed Matthew's left knee until to push forcibly against the stone, as though striving to release the torso from its imprisoning cowl. Arms held close, head twisted agonizingly away from the body, searching for a way of escape. At last he was back in the column, feeling whole again, and a master the fierceness of his joy, sending the chisel through the block like lightning through column cumulus clouds. He carved in a heat as great as that of the forge in which his tools were tempered. The marble and the flesh of Matthew became one, with Matthew projecting out of the block by the sheer force of his will to achieve a soul with which to rise to God. Did not every man strive to emerge from the womb to achieve immortality? Thirsting for more lyrical mood, he returned to today's Our Lady, carving the round frame, the serene, lovely face of Mary, the textured skin of the infant Jesus stretched across his mother's lap. Then came word from Pope Julius that Florence was to celebrate a jubilee of guilt and punishment in order to raise funds with which to build the new St. Peter's. I have been put in charge of the decorations, announced Granacci gleefully. Granacci, you're not going back to theater scenery again. After those fine paintings, it's a waste of your talent, I protest. My talent has plenty of time, said Granacci. A man should have some fun. A jubilee to pay for Bramante's church would be no fun for Michelangelo. It was scheduled for April. He vowed to flee the city and spend the days with the Topolinos. Again, the Pope interfered with his plans. We have just received a brev from Pope Julius, said Soderini. You see, it was sealed with the fisherman's ring. He asks you to come to Rome. He has good news for you. That can only mean he is going to let me carve again. You will go? Tomorrow. Sangallo wrote that my second shipload of marbles has been lying exposed in the Piazza San Pietro. I want to rescue them.